Hello and welcome to a special Friday, week 15 edition of some Underdog drafts. How's everyone doing? I think we're gonna have a fun show today. We got a lot of stuff to talk through. We've got best ball, regular season, advanced throughout, advanced last week, or advanced this week with going to the playoffs now. We've got some more battle royales going on. Top team in the battle royale last year pretty much had a perfect team. We can discuss that. And playoff best ball is hot. It's in action. We've already closed out the way too early wild card, the wild card, and now we've got the gauntlet. It sounds like some mittens are going to be coming pretty shortly. Um, I've got, let's see, I've got my strategy article up. We're doing some rankings for that with the battle royale. We've always still got those rankings and everything up. A lot to dive into today. First things first, of course, as always, for these, if you do, take a look at the ETR site, we have the rankings. We'll continue to update those each week. And if you are new to Underdog, still feel free, join using promo code ETR, $100 cash back on your first deposit. You can join us in this fun. Even though the season is winding down and we only have a few more weeks of the regular season, this is still one of my favorite times of the year with the playoff best ball draft starting. And yeah, I think we'll draft one of those today. All right, let's start off with doing a quick recap of last week. Let me share my screen. Okay. How's everyone else doing? See how the regular season best ball everyone go. I feel overall. So I'll talk through as I'm sharing this. Okay, there we go. So this was the winning team from last week. Hopefully everyone is able to see it. Absolutely well done. SYUYHAS, UHAS. Gets the Jalen Hurts, goes with Miles Sanders and Devonta Smith. Very rarely are we looking to stack in these where it's a QB, running back, and wide receiver, especially when it's a running back like Miles Sanders, who is not really much of a pass catcher. But I think the Eagles are just such an outlier on that, an outlier offense that they can hit their ceilings in various forms. And I mean, you look, Devonta Smith didn't really even hit much of a ceiling, only had 15 here. But when Jalen is your QB1 of the slate by far and away because of his rushing floor and just the overall efficiency of that team, Miles Sanders puts up 28. Devonta Smith still gets 15. We then get a mini stack with Derrick Henry and Evan Ingram. Pulling in that Evan Ingram, obviously week before, he was necessary for some DFS stuff, was in the Detroit game, was great leverage off of the rest of the field and had the touchdown. This week just went absolutely insane with 100+ yards, multiple touchdowns. Had to have Evan Ingram to even be making pretty much any cash this week. And then you just got the Justin Jefferson as the one-off there. And we know, obviously, and especially at Detroit, his upside is phenomenal. So well done there. I really feel like this is just a fantastic team, getting a bit unique with the Eagles triple stack with the running back aspect. Just insane upside every week there. So well done. I didn't have anything that really made any noise in this, but again, I also did not have basically any Evan Ingram. So that makes sense. All right. Morning, Andrew. How we doing? Can definitely take some questions. We'll go through this. What I want to do as well is we can I think this is a bit of an interesting week for the main slate. So while we do not have buys anymore, we do have a bit wonky scheduling. So for this week, we've have one game last night. We'll have 3 games Saturday. Then we'll have the majority Sunday and our Monday. So even though for the whole weekend, you're getting pretty much every player out there that's healthy. For our main slate, it kind of feels a little more traditional because you still have those kind of 3 games, 6 teams on Saturday. So that's kind of like our buys. For looking through looking through the actual positions wise, I think tight end is, let's start with tight end. So tight end, we have our Kelsey situation going against Houston. Just absolutely easy matchup. Question obviously becomes like how much they'll need to use him. But I think like he is by far and away, and he's my personal number one for to this week. I'd be drafting him number one overall in every draft. After that, there's just such a drop off. And it's pretty interesting. Like if you look at the ETR ranks, we have Taysom Hill is actually our number two option. And why is that? If you actually look at his snap counts and what he's been doing on offensive, he's playing around like 40%, 40 to 50% of the offensive snaps, turning into about, like, I think it's around like 24, 26 every game. That includes some at quarterback, includes some out wide. And so just from that, a straight projection, seeing him at that just under 10 points as number two overall. And then that there's also that, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, funky QB ceiling aspect where we know he can have some spike games just because the different, like him playing 40, 50% of snaps is obviously very different than Dalton Schultz or Greg Dulcich or someone else playing 40 to 50 snaps, because the way that he's being used, the highly concentrated aspect of his snaps, the design plays for him, they're just more valuable snaps on a per basis. So his ADP is coming in around 33.5, meaning he's being drafted decent amount. You're getting a little contrarian aspect, but those are the two tight ends that I'm probably heavily focusing on this week, unless I'm looking for a stack partner. You've got the Dak and Dalton aspect, or you went Fields and Kmet or something like that. But for the most part, it's either Kelsey or Boston. The Boston's probably Taysom for me. From a QB wise, we're talking about stacks, so going back there. If you look at the ranks, we actually have the QBs pretty high up. I think we may actually shift some down a little. And a lot of it is just because, like, hey, those top five are have a clear projection lead against the field. Now, it gets a little interesting when you're talking with five QBs, because at five, the next one is virtually free because you're only having 6 drafted in each one. And if one person reaches for outside those 5, you basically then have that fourth or fifth guy who's virtually free as well. So that's why I'm probably not, even though our ranks have like Joe Burrow and Justin Fields in that late second round, it's not where I'd be drafting them, obviously, both from an ADP, but also you're often going to have someone in the draft room that wants to reach for a QB because of its stack just outside of that core group. And that now gives you the opportunity to basically take like a Burrow or a Fields or maybe a Herbert in the near last round. So just keep an eye on that from a strategy wise. There's lots of good stack options this week. I think we're getting some decent health as well with some stack options with Justin Herbert. You get both of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are back there. Cincy, we're going to have to keep an eye on. Joe Burrow probably has one of the highest passing yards expectations this week against Tampa. We know how hard it is to run against Tampa. But the question becomes is who is he going to have back there? Who is he going to have actually healthy from a Tyler Boyd, from a T. Higgins, really to complement the Jamar Chase? We know that Burrow and Chase is going to be a very popular stack, especially because if we look at ADP, Jalen Hurts is the only QB we really have going in the first round. Mahomes is kind of that mid-second, which gives you the opportunity, if you can, to snag a Kelsey Mahomes stack. But all the others, Herbert, Burrow, Fields, are all going in that kind of third or later rounds, which makes those stacks very easy to get and kind of important to think through, like, hey, if you are going with these, maybe what's a way to potentially get contrarian with it. From a running back standpoint this week, I think this is probably one of the flattest running back weeks we've had in a while. I mean, if you look outside of the top 12, we've got Tony Pollard is projected as our 13th best running back, Zeke as our 15th best, and those are going against a great matchup against Jacksonville. You then have some more wildcard aspect, like a Pierre Strong, where if no Damian Harris, no Ramondre Stevenson, Pierre Strong could be a workhorse there, and his ADP is literally 36 right now, not being drafted at all. Just above that, you've got like David Montgomery, who's not the sexiest name, tough matchup against Philly, but being drafted as an ADP of 35.7. I say this because when I'm kind of strategizing around these drafts, I don't feel like, hey, it is a necessity to really be spending up for the running backs this week. If we look at the highest ADP ones, you've got Derrick Henry in a game that they very likely are going to be behind against the Chargers. You've got Austin Eckler, but with the Chargers team that is going to have a lot more weapons now, so he's just not getting that concentrated volume that we were seeing earlier in the season, especially when Keenan Allen is just going to continues his role as just a target monster. Josh Jacobs is our top projected, but you still have a very tough matchup against New England, still some injury risk there. And then you start getting into everyone else. There's a lot of question marks. Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon with P. Ryan, Zonovan Knight, but Michael Carter's back, like Pacheco, but McKinnon's playing a major role. So there's nothing feels great about the running backs this week. I think it may tempt people to be like, that's why I want to make sure I grab the Eckler, the Henry, or the Jacobs. But in my mind, I'm like, no, I think this is where I probably want to get a bit contrarian. This is where I'm going to be able to get a bit off the board with those Dave Montgomerys, the Latavius Murrays, ETN, and of course the P.S. Strong that I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of options to get off the board with guys that have similar floors with probably not too far off the upsides of those, top guys. And now wide receiver. I think we have two kind of standouts that ADP are saying it and completely agree from projections with Devontae and Jamar Chase. But after that, this is a very deep position this week as well. If you look all the way down, like we're saying, hey, at the 12 to 15 range, we're still including guys like DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, it's no Kyler. We still have someone like Christian Kirk, who we've seen the upside into the Trevor Lawrence offense, but obviously a tough matchup against Dallas. I probably am leaning as much as possible because, hey, we know that tight end I really like if I can get Kelsey. If I can't get Kelsey, I'm probably going to go heavily on the wide receivers this week, potentially even go with the double click, triple click of wide receivers just to differentiate and really get that elite ceiling upsides that the Devontae, the Chase, the Lamb, the Amon-Ra have that the others may not. Okay. That was a lot there. Let me jump into some questions real quick that I see in the chat, and then we can jump into an Underdog draft. Okay. Let's go. So, Andrew, I see you talking about kind of the BBM3, 15 out of 70. That comes out to what? 15 out of 70, 30 out of 140. Yeah, so that's like a 20, 21, 22% advance rate. Doing math on the spot. 21.4%. So well done there. I think honestly, anything other than just random chance is pretty decent. For me, I think I'm right around that 21% advance rate as well. A little lower than what I'm hoping. Usually I try to go with the 25. I think the BBM was my pretty much lowest advance rate of all of my contests. And I think that has to do with a few different things. But yeah, I think anyone that, hey, if you're getting above 20%, that's pretty solid. If you get above 25%, that's fantastic. And then ask them what's your take for battle royale. Is it more ideal to go with 2 running backs or 3 wide receivers? We've touched on this a little before, but my general thought is that from a pure projection standpoint, the second running back is almost always having a higher projection than the third wide receiver. So it always feels safer to grab that second running back. And sometimes like, hey, that is the smarter play. That is the higher upside. I would say most of my builds kind of end up leaning that just because I usually, am more. Because you only have at most 12 running backs drafted in everyone, usually you end up around like 10. I think it's easier to find a running back with high upside that's got a low draft, low draft ADP, not being drafted much, because you're getting maybe running back 15, 16, 17. As we talked about, like that Pierre Strong one, his projection is running back like 15 or so, but he's not being drafted at all. And so if you're trying to find a wide receiver that also has high upside that's not being drafted, it's a lot more challenging because you have to be looking towards wide receiver 15, 16, 17, 18, maybe even lower. And more people are willing to kind of reach on wide receivers because it completes their stack to get that stack correlation, while the running backs, because you don't really consider as much from a correlation standpoint with running backs, it's more of like, hey, usually people stick to that top 12. So that's where I'd say I usually lean a bit more to running backs, but there's definitely nothing wrong with going through our receivers. I believe it was 2 weeks ago we saw 3 wide receiver build, ended up taking down first place. So lots of opportunity there. And I mean, hey, wide receivers do have substantial upside as well. And if you can work it into your stack, even better. Why is Kelsey 1.01 if you're high on Taysom? Terrence asks. Because I think Kelsey just has a projection as well as ceiling that just can't be matched compared to any other position. His ADP is also 2 this week. So for the most part, even if he is my number 1, I'm only getting him in 33, maybe 40% of drafts or so. So I'm still going to, be heavily, still a lot of drafts I'm going to be going with that wide receiver build and such. And yeah, my high on Taysom is because I see a path where he's being drafted very late, sometimes not being drafted. So I'm getting some uniqueness aspect. Obviously, he has some upside, but Taysom very much could also still finish the game with 3-4 points. And I don't want to go into a strategy where it's like, hey, I'm just devoting my entire week to just the Taysom, just that one upside. If he, like the times that I'm willing to kind of go all in there, like we had with the Foster Moreau a few weeks back, is when like, hey, his ADP is legit like 35.7 or worse, like not being drafted. And now I know I'm getting the clear uniqueness plus upside angle of the Taysom. But because of where he's drafted at 33.5, a lot of other people are also drafting him as the week goes on. I think even more will with the ETR rankings and such, that I still like him as my second pick, as not devoting too much capital. But if I have the opportunity to get Kelsey, you just can't match that pure projection ceiling combo. All right. And and when we also talked about that the depth that you have at quarterback, the depth you have at running back, that's where if I can get Kelsey, I'm going to take him. Okay. I'll continue to answer questions as we go forward. For right now, though, let's jump into a draft. Okay. Let's try that again. All right, Battle Royale. We are just having some troubles today. Let's go. Share the screen. Let's go to the Chrome tab. All right, we are in. Let's see, who do we got in here? Recognize a couple names there. As always, ranks on the left are input from ETR. Made minor changes. Pretty much just putting Kelsey up top. As I said, ADP is now 1.7. He's going to be drafted in most of the drafts. We'll see if I can grab him with the 2. Otherwise, one thing to keep in mind as well for this week is going to be weather. There you go. I see you, Rob, Andrew, in the 4th spot. Nice. So with weather for this week, we are starting to get cold. There are a few games where it is projected to be below freezing. Philly, Chicago is one of them. Trying to see what the other couple of the others, but the only one I'm really concerned about for this week is the Buffalo, Miami. For what we're for our structures for this slate, that's not on there. So that's the only thing I want to mention. Didn't really want to spend too much time on it because from a DFS, Buffalo, Miami, like the storm that's coming in the night before, that could have a major impact on the game. Everything else that I've seen is it may be cold, but it's not going to be heavily, impacting the game. We'll watch the game totals throughout the week. All right. So if we want to go with the Jalen Hurts here, the challenge is that AJ Brown doesn't fall that often. So you're kind of accepting that, you're either playing an uphill battle if you don't get the stack. But the other side of things is that it's not, if you do get the stack to fall to you, you're getting some unique value there. For this, I think as the week goes on, I'll probably mix it up a little. Maybe that was probably a mistake. I probably should have grabbed one of these 2 wide receivers first. This is the first time that I've done for this week. I've done a little research, but haven't done any of the drafts yet. But basically, as we talked about, because of the depth of the wide receivers and such, the depth of the QBs, probably would have made sense for me to have grabbed one of these 2 wide receivers to start off. We know that if I would have gone Chase, I could have got Burrow with my, maybe even 4th round, 23, 26 or something. Maybe he would have fallen there. Lots of opportunity there, but that's why as you go through these, you'll start getting a feel for what's working, what isn't, where you should be drafting. But yeah, I just didn't take my own advice with the QBs. But it's okay. Jalen Hurts, we know he has an upside unlike anyone else. So if I'm going to be reaching on someone, I'm happy that it's him. AJ Brown goes there. I'm not going to be going with the Miles Sanders combo that we saw work last week, but I will put Devonta Smith in the queue. And no Goddard back yet, but it looks like Goddard, I think, was designated to return from IR. So it'll be interesting to see what he does for that offense with how well it's clicking when he comes back. Don't need to worry about it this week. From a Chicago, if we wanted to do some form of a bring back, we have that David Montgomery as that late pick. We have the Cole Kmet option as well. Just going to put those in the queue to keep an eye on them as the draft proceeds. You can see here, yeah, so Taysom moves up to 32.5 a little, as we have him as the number 2 there. Okay. We do have Josh Jacobs as our RB1. The elite. All right, I think I'm going to go Jacobs here because I'm going to hope that Devonta Smith falls back to us in this 23 spot, which means in the 14, I'm just going to be grabbing one of these wide receivers, expecting that this is going to be a 2 wide receiver build. So I didn't need to reach to grab a CeeDee Lamb or an Amon-Ra because I'm pretty much happy with either of them falling back to me here. Even if it had to be Garrett Wilson versus Detroit, sounds pretty nice too. So I'm going to grab CeeDee Lamb. We will see. We will see if Devonta is able to fall back to me, and we're starting to see can likely go with the Montgomery or the Cole Kmet. Still have the Taysom option falling back around as well. So lots of opportunities there. Let me go back to chat and see what you're saying here. All right, Greg's in the 3rd spot there. Let's pull a little draft card up right now. So we've got in this room, we got Greg here. Andrew in the 4. So there you go. Greg, or Andrew here went to Jamar Chase, gets that Joe Burrow to fall to him. Greg's going the full Chargers stack. I mean, hey, if you're going to choose the game environment against Tennessee, that could be such a high scoring. I'll be curious to see, does he do a bring back here? Obviously can't get the Henry. Traylon Burks likely not playing. Maybe Robert Woods. Robert Woods set a 20% target share. Feels gross, but I'll be interested to see what you end up doing with that one. What else do we have? So T. Baher in the 6th spot went with that strong, just wide receiver, and then a naked Fields here. So definitely just going for like pure uncorrelated upside, which I mean, all 3 of those guys can definitely have very strong games. Maybe a Cole Kmet to get some correlation for T-Bear there. We'll keep an eye on. Crazy Chet just looks like kind of some one-off stuff. Interesting. So Pacheco's been pretty strong as well with the Kansas City. I think that'll be an interesting one just for the next few weeks, how people are treating Pacheco versus McKinnon. Pacheco's obviously been a bit more consistent, but McKinnon had that huge week. We can get our Devonta Smith for the correlation. I like that. I'm just going to, before we jump into it, think about what we want to do with the next pick. Broman already has a tight end, so don't really need to worry about another tight end being sniped. So we'll grab Devonta here. I'm going to think, hey, maybe we can David Montgomery not practicing. I don't love it. Actually, it's okay because if he doesn't play, hoping it's a 1:00 game. If it's, Chicago probably is. We'd then be able to get a swap later on, which, we always love getting that swap equity, make that decision later on. Maybe then we'd have more clarity around like the, New England situation and Pierre Strong, some of these other guys that just have not been drafting. We're going to move Taysom up. Grab Taysom with the next one. Completely uncorrelated, but that's fine. But as much as I've been talking about him, pretty sure he would have gotten sniped if I let him fall once more. And his ADP says that he should be being drafted around that 32.5 anyway. So if we're going to, hey, if we like him as much as I've been talking about, makes sense reaching for him because our last piece anyways we're going to be going for a not being drafted much at all anyways. Other option would be if we wanted to go with like a Travis Etienne here, can get correlation there. I'm just really down in the Etienne situation because he's not catching passes. Dallas is a fantastic defense as well. Like, yeah, they put up such huge numbers last week, and Etienne's still pretty much nothing. I'm just getting the volume from rushes, but just not that receiving work. And 17 of 32. That's almost as bad as Dalvin Cook's stat line from last week. Honestly. So yeah, it's still like, hey, would be a possibility. You could still see him, falling in, grabbing 2 touchdowns or something. It would give us correlation against the CeeDee Lamb, but it's just not a favorite pick of mine. It feels a little bad. Like David Montgomery may not have that explosiveness and burst that we like, but we know that he's still getting decent volume. And we like the receiving work. We like the attempts. Chicago, maybe Fields can have another one of his games where it opens up the offense. But again, we'll see. Keep an eye on what he does for practice today. But from a Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith game environment, that's what I'm leaning towards. James Conner as a one-off is kind of interesting. His 90% plus usage, snap shares, I think only him and one other running back had that the past week, and he's been pretty consistent with it. They really, really do like him. Without Kyler Murray, with Colt McCoy, like we saw Colt kind of doing a bit more checkdowns to him. How much can his usage be? I'm not going to go for it in this draft just because I think it is important for us to get a one-off low-owned play. But this is what I'm talking about with regards to how deep I think the running back position is. We're at the end of the draft, and James Conner, Joe Mixon are not even being drafted. And they won't be drafted with the next pick too because he's already maxed out. So that's why lots of value at the running back position. Definitely not something that overall I want to be reaching unless in this situation, we have Jacobs as the number 1 overall projected. And we were getting a good opportunity there. Gerald, I hate my draft. I don't know. I didn't love mine either. Let's do another one. We'll do another. I gotta take my own medicine. That was a mistake drafting AJ Brown. We'll see what happens here. I want to probably go with either the Kelsey or a bit more of the strong wide receivers this time. Come on, jump in. We'll do one more. All right, reading through some of the chats. Maybe I missed any questions or anything. Justin asking, isn't win base the only thing that really affects offensive output unless it's a total blizzard? In general, yes. So there are some data that around temperature changes when you do get to the extremes, when you do get to freezing, it can have a small impact. Usually from a game total, it goes down a point or two. From how actionable aspects, what should we actually be doing about it? What you said is pretty much correct. Unless you have just an absolute extreme weather situation on one of the sides where it's just so much rain that the field's going to be a slosh fest, so much snow that they're not able to melt it off. Then other than those, it's the wind is the only thing. And even then, you've got to okay, so if it's 15 to 20 mile per hour winds, does that matter? I don't know, not that much, but then you get gusts that go to 30, 35. Now this matters a little. Also depends on the quarterback. Some quarterbacks, maybe they're changing the structure, but in general, the wind is what we want to focus on. From what I've seen, and it looks like there's going to be decent wind in that Miami-Buffalo game. So just the whole environment doesn't look great. The others where it is freezing cold, I think the Washington game, it's going to hover around 30 degrees, but there's minimal, if any, wind. And so that's something that I'm just not too worried about. Okay. And yeah, I think for that, Gerald's asking for that Miami-Buffalo, we'll keep an eye on it, but it's the night before looks like a horrible storm. We'll see about the next day. Usually there may be some residual effects there. Okay, so we've got Chase, we got Devontae, we got Kelsey, all the guys that I was talking about going. Then you've got Hurts. 6-7 spot feels ugly if you're not going to get one of those receivers to fall to you. Chat, what should I do with this draft? What do you want me to do? Let me know, chat. Let's see how quickly you can put it in there for what do we want to do with the structure-wise. Mahomes doesn't feel great. Ooh, everything feels really bad. I'm seeing if you guys respond in time because I really do not know what I want to do for this draft. You guys got a couple seconds. I know there's a delay. All right. We're going to go with a naked Mahomes. Maybe we'll throw in a Juju later or something. All right. What do we want to go as well? Go Eckler, could go Jacobs. Gosh, these all just feel so ugly. We're going to go Jacobs. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. All right. We ended up taking, we're going to go with a unique build. We grabbed Juju way too early. That was a little lag on the computer there. Wasn't able to get Josh Jacobs in there in time. Well, that's the value of streaming with, well, of drafting with streamers. All right, we've got Juju, we got Mahomes. The thing is with these battle royales is like, you know, if you do that in a best ball draft and you take someone, hey, 5-10 rounds, you know, like, oh, you know, what Juju would be like a second to last round. If you do that in a best ball draft, like your draft it's very, very low EV. In this, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter that much because we always want to be able to find ways to get unique. And as I said, like everything is fairly flat for this week, especially at the running back position. I would have rather obviously grabbed like a CeeDee Lambs than I could go with the Juju or the Amon-Ra or something. Or I think I was going to go with the Josh Jacobs just because of his individual upside. But that's okay. There you go. Yeah, Coop saying it's unique. It's unique. Hi. Let's take a look. So we got a couple other people from the chat again in this. So starting off, we've got Kelsey solo with a little Dallas combo 1-2 going on here. Jay Duep grabbing the Jamar Chase, the Burrow, getting some late value on the Jacobs, which we like. Crazy Chet getting the Eagles stack with a strong Eckler. Coming back around to me here. We do still have Amon-Ra if we want to go with it. All right. We said we're going to go to unique. We're going to go with Amon-Ra and Garrett Wilson as the mini stack correlation. Go with a 3 wide receiver build here. So now we're just down to a running back and a tight end. We'll see what we can put together. We'll go back to see what the rest of the draft is doing here. Gerald did not want me to take Amon-Ra. I'm sorry. You don't have any claim on Amon-Ra. It's not like you were going to be drafting Goff. You probably already drafted QB2. Get out of here. All right. So here we got the Herbert, we got the Keenan Allen with the Derrick Henry. Love that game stack aspect there. This is probably going to be a pretty fun one to do throughout the week, just because there's so many ways that, especially if you start with Derrick Henry, how you can stack the Chargers. We'll probably see some drafts where people are able to get like a Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler. Then you grab a Herbert and you can maybe get like a Keenan Allen and Mike Williams as well. If you didn't want to grab, if you missed out on the wide receiver, you could also go with the Gerald Everett. I'd probably be more willing to go with, as I talk about when I'm doing a stack, if I grab a wide receiver and I want to go with a double stack, I'm more likely to go with the tight end just because for Gerald Everett to kind of remain competitive, he really just needs a touchdown. Where it's a lot harder, not impossible. We literally saw it last week, and we've seen it before with the Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, for a running back wide receiver to both get there. Just a little more challenging in these structures. But I like what you're doing there. In this middle one, we've got another 3 wide receiver build here with Devontae, A.J. Brown, Mike Williams, all with very strong individual upside scenarios there. I'm personally keep an eye on tight end and running back. We know we'll be able to get a running back that we like. So for tight end, only Everett and Kelsey have gone. I don't really have a stack partner that I'm looking for with Kelsey gone and the mini correlation here. Jordan Akins, I don't know. He might be like a punt play on DFS side of things. I don't think I'd ever be able to convince myself to grab him here. So I'll pass on that and just go with kind of one of our one-off guys that we've been talking about. You were going to take the Amon-Ra, Garrett Wilson. I know, it feels so good. It's just a nice little mini correlation there. I wonder how unique it actually is, though, when they're both being drafted right next to each other. Just kind of pops off the board too easily. Appreciate you all for giving me my Taysom again. So we will grab Taysom, and now we're looking for a final running back. Oh, it feels odd. So Cordell Patterson, I think, is a pretty interesting one this week because they have moved it down to basically a two-man backfield, which when there's a two-man backfield, we know we can find a little more value. Most interesting for me is because Desmond Ridder is there, you just have a overall higher variance possibility that maybe they lean, I don't know how much more they can lean on the running game, but maybe if they can actually just be a more efficient team, because Cordell Patterson still got majority of the work, the valuable work, like inside the red zone. But I don't think we need to pull the trigger on that in this one. Joe Mixon, hard to run against Tampa, but he can be using the passing game, especially with everyone else banged up. I don't want to go with the Zonovan, so yeah, I'm just going to go with the Joe Mixon here. I think we have a fairly unique team just because the way it was sillily built and we basically indirectly faded the top running backs and top wide receivers. There isn't, I was talking to someone about battle royales previously, and we were talking about kind of is because so many of the ADPs for those first, second rounds really stay pretty steady throughout. I'll take a look at rankings as I talk through this. But when you just look at kind of the ADP aspects, every team is pretty much going to have one of Kelsey, Hurts, Chase, Henry, Eckler, Devontae, AJ, Mahomes. And so because it's very rarely that someone in the first round is starting their draft, not grabbing one of these, maybe 8 or 9 players. And so in a crazy week where all 8 or 9 of those absolutely busted, if you draft some teams where you just don't draft one of those first rounders, are you inherently getting just such a strong edge on the field in that outlier situation? Because now you've got literally 99 point whatever percent of teams that have a bust on their team. And so what are your chances of kind of, creating a strong team that lacks that bust by just avoiding that first 8, 9? It's not something that I've really been employing. It just feels dirty. It feels like you're just giving up so much projections. But it's something that I'm trying to kind of experiment a bit with to get a feel for, because I do think there's a strong argument. It probably only works for some weeks and such. I think where in the draft makes sense you are too. So if you get that 1-2 spot, in my mind, that Kelsey, it's just too valuable. If you get that 6-7 spot, maybe that's where it's hey, you're at 6-7. Instead of going for the Devontae, AJ Brown, Mahomes, maybe you just start the draft then instead with Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, because now you've avoided that. I don't want to call it a trap, but hindsight, if you look and see if there was just that bust zone of all the first, ADPs, maybe then you're getting that leg up without actually giving up too much projections. Something to think through. I think it's an interesting way to probably, maybe an interesting approach to get unique. I'm not sure. Oh, seeing this last minute news, a lot of people popping in. Zach Wilson just named the starter for the Jets right when we draft Garrett Wilson. Burn it all down. That is unfortunate. Doctors won't clear Mike White. Darn. Interesting for the best ball drafts. Got a lot of Garrett Wilson. He was one of my kind of, hey, absolutely love him in the 10th round. Let's take a look at that real quick. What do we have? I don't know if I don't know how it would work, but yeah. So if I can, we can do this on the screen. I know a lot of people here. Obviously, we've been playing the best ball. We're interested in what the playoffs look like and stuff. Let me see what we can do. So best ball. All right. So here's my exposure for the BBM3. My team's at advance. As I mentioned, got around a 21% advance rate. So fine, not great, but a lot of that's because of the correlation, the streaming aspects. I do think this is a really strong tournament. If I'm looking specifically at the Jets, so yeah, 15% Michael Carter going to be playing today, or playing this week, but you're not expecting too much. The Garrett Wilson, Zach Wilson. So maybe if we can get a good game, I definitely don't like it. I would have rather had Mike White just for my Garrett Wilson, just for the overall strength of that offense. It's going to be tough, but oh well. We roll with the punches. Fire up Detroit defense for DFS. Yeah, that might be an ugly game with now Zach Wilson playing. Also, I thought it was interesting because a couple days ago they did move him from the third spot to the backup QB. Thought that was more of just a kind of sign of respect for, hey, you're doing the right things in practice, but maybe, not to say that wasn't it, but also maybe they knew that this Mike White thing wasn't really going to work out from a time-wise, coming from a getting cleared to play from a health-wise, and maybe so that's why they were like, hey, let's put Zach Wilson to the 2, so when we have to announce that the Mike White's not going to get cleared, we now have Zach Wilson as the de facto starter again. Good luck to him. We'll see. Okay, that was fun. Looking forward, I don't think we have time for a playoff best ball draft today, but we will definitely be doing a bunch of those going forward. On Monday, I'm going to be jumping on a pod with Leone. I believe it's the Establish the Edge. We're going to talk through strategy for the playoff best ball contests. As mentioned, we do already have the playoff best ball strategy article. Highly recommend, if you're going to be jumping into these drafts, take a look at that, read it, skim it, do whatever you need to do. But it is very helpful for thinking about how we should be structuring, how we should be thinking of upside, what we should really be drafting from a scenario basis. We do have rankings as well. Those will continue to get updated every probably Tuesday or Wednesday. I like to make sure that we're incorporating all of the latest win totals, odds, playoff odds, potential for the bye, new odds from Vegas with regards to winning conference, getting to the Super Bowl, things like that. So lots of stuff there. We'll continue to pump it out. Anything else? As always, appreciate leaving any comments on the YouTube. It's what gets the bosses to kind of allow me to keep coming back and providing you all this content. Or feel free to reach out on Twitter. Give me a tag if you have any questions. This is a fun week. Best of luck to all of you in the draft streets, and have a great weekend. All right. See you all later.